blues. With the cloud that rolling too. We won't stop and we won't slow. We got that gun that the red ring low. Spamming local, spamming local, spamming local too. Spamming local, black, 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 too. I feel just like a retard.
All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Push to Talk. And I don't think we can hear Dirk. Is he still messed up? He's showing green.
No, I'm fine.
Oh, you're good? You're good? All right, cool. So, everybody, we have Caleb with us today. We've got Dirk, and we've got Mist, and we've got McLeod and myself. So, welcome to another episode. What?
Almost a full crew. We're just missing RJ, right? And sorry.
RJ is, I guess he's out harpooning a new house or whatever he's doing, right?
Yeah, that's how you get houses in America.
Who is Lilipower, and do we know who they are? They already outed McLeod. Jeez.
McLeod, what the fuck are you wearing? Just let's address this.
Oh, Bargos is here too.
Yeah, special appearance from the bard.
Hi guys.
And McLeod, your mic is muted for some reason. Is that?
There we go.
There we go. There we go.
I'm just, you know, I'm in solidarity with the people of Hong Kong. That's all I'm doing.
Yay!
That's a fair point. Like, yeah, free Hong Kong.
Love Hong Kong.
I'm just hoping
Great.
McLeod doesn't disappear midstream.
Greatest liberation, greatest revolution of our age.
Let's hope they are okay.
I may get assassinated.
You may, maybe not. No. I want
CCP
to.
has no power here.
Holgerd von Cross, thank you for the follow. That's lets me remind everybody in chat that if you're not following INN, please do so. We love the follows. If you want to subscribe, hit the subscribe button because with anybody who has Amazon Prime, your subscription fee is free unless you upgrade to the tier 1. As well as, we always accept tips and cheers too. So thank you to everyone in advance for anything that they do. So, and we will stop periodically in the show to recognize people who do that stuff. So, as we always do. So we've got lots of people.
Always, he says.
What?
Always, you say that, Eric, is as if that actually happens all the time.
Well, people follow, people subscribe all the time, and we do. So yeah, and occasionally we get the $3.33 tip, occasionally. Which by the way doesn't even cover our Zoom server rental fees.
Or your beers.
Beer.
We only do artisan beers, so $3 is not really going to cover it.
The
$3 only gets you like the fucking the paper kind of fucking holder for it.
Yep.
I will say, if there's anybody in the audience who plays Atlas, wants to play Atlas, wants to hang out with the Goon crew in Atlas, feel free to ping me because we got a bunch of people playing, and it's really really kind of fun, sailing the seas and blowing the shit out of people. I think we blew up. We won an island
Eric
eventually.
loves to blow people.
We won an island, and some people took an island that we potentially want in the future, and we went and blew up like 7 or 8 ships and crushed them, and they gave up. We'll go back later. And Sam speaking, thank you for the follow as well. That's great. So set up a Patreon. Yeah, I think we have one technically set up, but a little power, so we'll figure it out.
We don't have
We'll figure it out.
herf and blurf about it enough for us to validate.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my non-Eve stuff. It's out of the way. It's all done. We're good. Mist has a couple things. Caleb's got a couple things. We're gonna have a fun day talking about Eve.
The second alternative, if you're still looking for something else than Eve, is of course the other Eve that everyone seems to be interested in these days. Eve Echoes. It's what pretty much everyone is playing secondary games. Star Galaxy.
See,
Eve
I
Echoes,
you went down like
Echoes.
I was thinking of something else, but that's just.
I mean, there's apparently like 3 different options here, and they're all mobile games. And really, are actually any of them good? I don't know. I've not played any of them, but
compared to what we're accustomed to in Eve these days, I don't really know what good is anymore.
I mean, honestly, like, you know, if your experience of Eve Online has been like being grated by like being, you know, basically having someone with like really rough sandpaper grate your face with it, like, you know, changing, you know, a change to sort of like a really nice sort of like fine grain kind of sandpaper is going to feel really nice and, you know,
Really
in
nice.
comparison.
I will note.
It's still great in your face.
Interesting.
I'm looking at
just going with the fine grained sandpaper as a massage kind of line here. I love that.
It's called exfoliating. Okay.
Yeah, there we go.
If you're
massage.
past the skin, it's not exfoliating it anymore.
I had an
It's-
interesting conversation though. I want to get into because I was playing a non-Eve game, right, with multiplayer people, right, and they were going, "Yeah, when we get into big battles, the game just becomes unplayable." And I'm sitting there going, well,
Oh my god!
I said, I asked them question,
mean-
like, well, how many people is like a big battle? And he's like, well, you know, you get close to 200 people and it gets just so laggy and we just can't play it. And I'm sitting there going, you have no idea.
I mean, that is
It's like when
a
people
feather-
talk about.
Let's
Sorry,
actually
go
be
for it.
honest here. It is a feather in CCP's cap that they have managed to create
Yes.
some technology that is still horrendous. Like, this is 2019, and you're here talking about 200 people in a game, and yet we've been playing with thousands for years. It's
Yes.
it's
It almost
definitely
makes
impressive.
me. It almost makes me think back to when people were like talking about dual universe and going, "Oh yeah, it's going to be an Eve killer. Yeah, you should watch out, etc., etc." And like, I literally, you know, I listen to people's like the especially the developer kind of shit to dual universe and kind of go, "Wow, so this is basically like Eve in 2005."
Yeah, someone linked
But
me
even
the-
worse.
Someone was linking me the updates to the auction house in World of Warcraft, and it was like, "Oh, you managed to actually stack the piles, so it doesn't look like shit anymore." It's like, you are not even at Eve 2003 yet. Come on, guys, wake
Yeah.
up.
And
So, markets, ecosystems, multi PvP, Eve is still number 1, which is why they also
it's-
won that Gamerant thing, right? They
Well,
got classified as number 1 on MMOs.
and this just goes to show, right? I mean, we complain a whole lot, right? But when you've got the potential factors and you've got these building blocks, right? If you make the right decisions, there's no way to lose here, and we're hoping they do. By the way, I'm reading leadership chat in Atlas, and they're like, "Hey, by the way, we can rename our island. Should we rename it Delve?"
But it is probably true,
Fortress
right?
Delve, if the characters allow.
By the
Yeah,
way,
just
all the
Fortress
boats,
Delve. Cool.
all the boats are getting named after Eve ships for our fleet. So it's funny as shit. So I mean, there's lots of Eve players over there having fun, right? Not telling people to go over there, but it's a thing where people. And by the way, the person saying this hasn't played Eve in months. Okay. And they're sitting there going, hey, let's bring all these Eve things into our other game. So if you've got players that do that, you need to figure out a way to harness it and build on it, as a company CCP does, I think.
People want to play Eve. It's just really hard to actually do so at the moment in any way that's fun.
Well, and explain more about that. Dig into that, and why do you say that? No, come on.
That is the deepest rabbit hole you will ever be asked to delve into.
But it matters, right?
I mean, as much as there is the joke that you never quit Eve for a reason, right? People will always come back. It's just at the moment the game is arguably in a bad state. And as much as people want to play, they just don't find the activities they would do.
And that's back to what Eric was just mentioning, right? The fact that there are like 3 USPs of Eve that no one has actually been able to even remotely start copying in the rest of the game world. It's like, how is this not been copied yet? But apparently we need to play Eve because you can't get that kick anywhere else.
I mean, I told these people, I mean, you're talking about maxing out at 200, 250 people in a fight. I'm sitting here going, that's like a fleet, one that we might have on the grid.
Like
we might have
that's one
5
fleet.
or 6 of them on the grid. And they're sitting there going, really?
But the thing is, Eric, some people just want those small gang fights.
I mean, that's fine. People can have their small gang fights, but let's actually have some, I don't know, balance to this. I've been.
I would like to say to the small gang fight crew, right?
Yeah.
You do realize you're playing an MMO, right? And you do realize what the first M actually stands for in that particular, one.
I mean,
massive.
Miniature?
For fuck's sake. Miniature.
Miniature. Yeah.
Or my
miniature
multiplayer online
multiplayer.
game.
Yeah.
Masochist?
I like Reload, right? Small gang equals no fun, and I disagree, right? You can do things even in the largest alliance in the game as a small gang within that and have a ball, right?
But if you're a small gang and all you're doing is ganking industrialists and people moving stuff and you think that that's fun, then you need to actually
it's fun.
Open your eyes a little bit more.
It's fun for a little bit, but if that's all you log in to do, it can get boring. And that's another huge benefit that CCP has with EVE Online. When you get bored doing small gang, you can go do giant big gang fleet things. And when you get tired of being in a big fleet, you might want to be one of the guys who thinks about where the fleet goes. You might be, if you're like me, I do not like the tedium of figuring out the best fit, and I don't like to sit there and tinker for 40 hours figuring out how to fit my harpy.
Oh, come on, that's fun.
No, it's not.
There's specialists
fun
for that
enough.
stuff.
Not for me.
Especially the Asher type of harpy, where you've just got to figure out how to organize your cargo space to optimize everything.
Well, that's true too, right? But there are people who like to do that, right? So when you look at what EVE Online is, it's got things for everybody. Now, I still think it's overly complex with building and things like that. I think that's too much of a pain in the ass, and I think if you want higher retention in EVE, and I hate the term, but I'm going to use it anyway, you got to dumb it down a little. Okay.
No.
No, he's right.
Go away.
We've got to. The thing is, right, and this is something that I've been yelling about for months now, and I'm going to yell about it again today, apparently, because this is the topic. We need balance. We need complexity in the right areas. We need the right stepping stones for newer players or people to get into these new different types of things. The ghost fitting was a really good step in the right direction for new people wanting to learn how fits work and go together, because they could do it in the game instead of having to go to Python. But, I've been sat in the Faction Warfare Discord for probably a couple of weeks now, I think. Ever since I heard about the Faction Warfare moratorium thing going on in Amar Mimitar. And they've got channels upon channels on things like ship balancing and stuff. And even within these smaller gang communities, the communities that want to be seeing these smaller fights, 30 versus 30 or smaller, kind of around that, they're talking about how things like the Garma is actually kind of oppressive. Things like the Kikimora and the Triglavians having been a power creep answer to a question that should never have been an issue. Triglavians are touted as this whole thing of they kill caps, and they do it very well. But when the answer to your question of capitals are oppressive is bring in a new ship, your game's not fucking balanced, and that's where the lack of fun comes in. There's no real counterplay.
See, the thing is, hang on quickly, bud. The thing is, Doug, right? What you said there, right, sounds very serious. You're being very serious here, Doug. And
I've been yelling about it for a while.
And my counter to that entire spiel, by the way, is no. We don't need balance. Balance is just someone sitting on a fence, not knowing which side to land on.
I mean, sorry, I was going to turn around and say...
Can I get on my tightrope, please?
No, and there's some comments here in the chat, right? Make it easier to do Titans. That's not what we're talking about, right? There are ways to add insanity of complexity into the build of a Titan, right? By making you build, these tiny parts, those tiny parts going into bigger parts, and those bigger parts going into bigger parts, and then finally those bigger parts go into your Titan, right? That will and can drive people crazy. Oh wow, we just lost the live feed, and I'm not sure why.
What?
So we just lost it. You guys seen that?
It seems to be back for me.
Okay,
Back for me too.
it's not back for me yet.
Thank you very much, by the way. Hopefully this comes through. But thank you very much, Tiebreak, for subscribing.
Oh yes, thank you very much. So when you think about the complexity of that type of build versus, hey, by the way, we're going to make you build a set of things, and that single set of things goes into that ship. But those things are a lot more of those things than they used to be, right?
What you're describing is just T2 production here.
Right. Rather than going, think about it. If you want to build, your stuff, you have to get moon goo. You have to do all the reactions to moon goo. You got to do things on the planetary interaction stuff. And then you got to do levels of actions in that. And then eventually you get materials in the mining and everything. And eventually you get the materials to build one, right? And all of that complexity could be put into one or two tiers of building and then assemble something. That's something that is a lot easier for people to wrap their heads around without having 52 spreadsheets. Okay?
But the spreadsheets are fun.
They're not fun.
I love making
they're not fun.
spreadsheets.
And you could,
I swear.
You could then make those quantities of lesser complexity of build larger. Okay? And it would be something that more people could get into as a game, right?
You're just so wrong. It's the other way around.
Yeah.
You need to make it more complex, add more bottlenecks, so you can't actually do things solo. So you need to outsource your jobs, right? That's why organizations are the only ones that should be able to do these things. That's how we had it in the past. That's what got removed. And now everyone can just add multiple accounts and do things solo. And that's why the game is so stale and dumb.
He's got a point. I mean, how many Titans could you build in a single pos?
I mean, that is very
Effectively
true.
only one.
I'm not talking about bottlenecks in other places. I'm saying that if you're looking to appeal to the mass market and grow your player base, this is something that you need to do.
Well, they don't need to. They honestly don't need to, Eric. It's been noted by people who have experience in other MMOs that the retention rate for EVE Online is kind of about the same as other MMOs. It's not that great. It's not that great, and it's not great compared to certain other things, because certain other things, like say for example mobile kind of new mobile MMOs, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may be great, but they're pulling from a much larger kind of potential customer size, right? So yeah, they're going to have higher numbers, just because that's just a fact, right? 5% of 3 billion people is a lot more than 5% of 200,000 people. It's just maths.
Yeah. Master Sock, thank
Very
you very
soft.
much for the 15-month sub. Thank you. Yeah, I disagree. You need to, you just got to make it easier.
But like I say, you need to fix the complexity in some areas. You got to make it easier in others. There's a balance here because
Right.
a
The
lot
fact
of
that you
players
can
do
build-
play Eve for the complexity.
Yeah.
You've
The
got to chalk that up, Eric.
Yeah,
it's
and
ironic.
the fact that you can build unlimited slots in any station was a huge mistake.
I'm
There
gonna
still need
just
to be
jump in.
bottlenecks. Go ahead.
I'm jumping in and I'm going to say it's ironic you speak about balance because isn't that what they promised us that they'd spend this year doing in the 80?
Yeah, but then they also promised us
Heresy.
that this was just a postponement of the AT, and they've promised us this, that, and the other, and we're seeing, well,
None of
as Dopamine said in the interview with TIS the other week, and as many people said about CCP in 2011, don't judge them on what they say, judge them on what they're doing.
And just to get back very fast to the whole thing about specialization, right? Back in the day when you needed to build your first battleship, right? You needed at least 5 or 10 specialized people to do that effectively, right? Because not everyone could be perfect in refining. Not everyone could be perfect in building. Not everyone had the means to actually invest in the blueprints, right? We had the complexity, which is not really complexity. It's just about specialization. But all that specialization got removed and destroyed with things like skill point injections, right? So now everyone can just have a perfect refining hull. Everyone can have a perfect building hull. So everyone can just multi-box their way out of these things that used to take big organizations to actually do something effectively. Of course, you can say, well, it should be possible to do this solo or by using multi-boxing, right? Sure, but then it should not be as efficient. That's the whole point, because otherwise, all those roles, all the need for these people, real people that are playing the game, is going away. And that's exactly what we have now. There is hardly any value to specialization in EVE today. So all the things that were fun in the past when you build organizations is completely worthless now.
Yeah, because it's effectively
Hey,
You
Soth
get-
is
You're
here.
really
Welcome,
quiet.
Soth.
Turn yourself up a bit, dude.
Yes, something need volume.
Let me see if I can push him up.
Also, quickly, this is what happens, Eric, when you lead us down this rabbit hole. By the way,
You asked for this.
You asked for this.
But it's the conversation that's the thing. It's not whether any one of us is right or wrong. It's about having the conversation.
We don't have any resolution.
It doesn't matter. We don't need resolution. It's not our job. Our job is to ask questions.
Our
bullshit
job
about it
is
and
to
act
ask
like
the
we're-
questions, and
Yeah.
CCP's job is to ignore them.
Well, that's what they do. Soth, can you talk? See if I boosted your sound enough.
I am talking, blah blah blah, hi.
You are still extremely
Yeah.
silent.
I made you 200%.
I can't turn it up anymore.
All right, we'll have to be quiet. You guys in the audience, can you hear Soth? Okay.
I mean, I haven't met 200%, but
Audience,
Soth, say
they've left us. They don't care
Say
anymore.
something.
Like fuck
well,
'em.
no, something needs to say something for us to
I
hear
can-
it
I can
and then
boost
comment
it
about
to
it.
this.
Nope.
Yeah, it's about this. It's exactly the same. Are you sure you're using the right microphone? Because
Yes.
I don't hear
I
any
only have
difference. Okay.
Okay, Soth's done something. Soth, what was your point? We'll be very quiet.
I can actually turn this up. Is this
Whoa!
getting
There we
Oh,
go. There we go.
Hello.
All right. My point here is that player retention doesn't have anything to do with how complex the game is. Nothing at all. What player retention has pretty much everything to do with is the social aspect of the game. And, before, something like complexity was driving people into the social, was driving people into corporations, right? Because they were looking for help, because they didn't understand stuff, because they couldn't do things alone, right? Once you actually know people in the game, you are staying in the game because of those people, because you like playing with them, because you found friends in the game, and you keep coming back to the game for those people, not for the complexity. That is how a fucking MMO works. Not just EVE, every MMO. That's how WoW got big.
If you make friends, they help you round the complexity, right?
Yeah, and the roles get distributed, right? That's half the fun of figuring out where you want to specialize. It's the difference between everyone just being grunts and everyone being Navy SEALs, right? Specialization is fun. Getting to find what you like and what you want to be really good at is pretty much the thing that drives the early phases of organization building. Then, of course, it gets to a point where there's not really enough specialization for every role, but then you kind of have to figure out how do you scale this and how do you make an actual, well, this sounds boring, but org chart and who gets to get what hat and all that stuff. And it's just a natural progression. This is what EVE should be about, because that's pretty much what we've been doing since 2003. And it's so exciting to figure out where you fit into these things. And when you fail, that's also interesting, because then you have the chance to actually go back and do it all over again and figure out where did you go wrong. This is the story of Goons, right? Goons have been historically really bad at EVE, right? But every time they make mistakes, they come back, figure out how to fix the flaw, and come back stronger, right? This is what organization building should be about. That's what's fun.
Yeah, they're falling upwards.
Yeah, failing upwards.
just clawing our way on the backs of like every fucker that's dead in front of us, just climbing up this mountain of skulls.
It's also why all these narratives from people like, Maddie and Ash that keep saying that you can't dislodge a big organization. But historically, that's not been true. Not in EVE and not in real life. Every time an organization that might be the lead one gets to a certain point, it starts failing because there's always going to be pressure points, or at least there was in the past. Now there's not, because you can pretty much sit there and knob away and crab away all day in Delve. So there's no points of failure. You can't dislodge Goons today because the game is broken.
Yeah, I mean,
and people in Delve who are mining and doing what they need to do, everything that they require is in Delve as well. So they don't need to move. They don't need to kind of interact with other people. They don't feel the necessity to trade with partners or even with, somewhat neutral parties in areas that are fairly neutral, like say, Jitter.
The only point of failure today is that CCP seems to have weaponized boredom against the end level players, so they will get bored and fuck off, or they're going to bring in things like the blackout, which pretty much is just going to waft away all the flies from the turret. It's like, okay, leave the game, we don't need you anymore. Oh, okay, fine, we're going to quit. And that's exactly what you saw. We are now at 2005, 2006 numbers of live players in EVE, and no one seems to be worried about this.
That's really that really is the kind of difficult thing with CCP at the moment, is that, hey, they did the blackout, and whether you liked it or not, the blackout had some positive aspects, it had some negative aspects. I'm not gonna, get into that hugely, but the blackout, when they ended it, they gave a statement where basically they said it was really interesting to see the data and see how players adapted, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact of the matter is that players adapted out of EVE. They went off and played other games.
No.
A lot of the time, a lot of those players aren't coming back necessarily. The peak concurrent user count is going back up for sure, but I was actually looking at Jester Trek. Jester Trek still does tracking of bits of data from the login amounts, and he was looking at the average concurrent users. In September, just as a reminder, the blackout ended roughly halfway through September. And in September, the average concurrent user count was roughly 17,000 players. And it basically, September was the lowest point of a just just a continued. I wouldn't call it a cliff. It was more of a hill. The peak concurrent dropped off a cliff, but the average concurrent is kind of just on a slow decline. And I don't know, something's got to give somewhere at some point, surely.
I want to
Okay,
talk about those
use of word
17,000
decline.
people. Sorry, before we get too far, so I want to talk about those 17,000 people because we mentioned that we're at 2005, 2006 numbers. Now, how powerful were computers back in 2005, 2006? They weren't, obviously, we don't have the same type of processor, we don't have the same type of graphics to memory, everything that the computing power that we have today.
Fairly certain
Now,
I couldn't
obviously-
quad box back then.
Eve is obviously a game that's expanded in its requirements over the time, but how many? What I'm trying to say is like how many of those were individual players playing one account compared to today? How many of them are going to be playing a ton more accounts? Like the average person probably plays a couple more, or back in the day they only had one account on the go. Also, 2005 was around the time that they introduced the drone lands. So Eve itself we had physically more players, more real life people playing the game, and we had a much smaller in-game map. We didn't have drones, we didn't have wormholes, so there was a lot more. You were more likely to see other players. Now we are in 2005 numbers, but with a much bigger map, a much bigger world.
There's also another
Universe?
thing that you saw more people flying around because it was necessary to fly around, right? You didn't have interceptors that could just warp through bubbles. Nullification wasn't a thing back then. That meant that if you wanted to get from place A to place B, you had to go through gates in a ship that can be caught by a gate camp.
And
gate
also,
camps-
by the way, Sothrill, like something that a point that Grath made, I think on Open Comms as well, was like back then you didn't have jump freighters like as such. Like so, if you were moving stuff to HiSec, you had to do it through a corridor, and you had to basically protect that, that particular
Good old
investment
freighter
to get
convoys.
there. Freighter convoys and stuff like that was a thing back, back then up until the point where we got jump freighters, and then obviously people moved to jump freighters because it basically required less people, and it required less trust in people to keep you alive to your destination.
Even
You
when
could-
you
you
had
could
jump
almost say-
freighters, you still had points of failure, right?
Oh, there's still points of failure, but there's much less points of failure. But yeah, anyway, sorry to butt in on yourself.
Well,
Yeah.
just to jump back a bit further, but if CCP aren't worried about doing damage to the player count, then how about we try something else? We A/B test PE and making it as basic as possible, and seeing how player organizations help.
Sorry, you cut out a little bit there. We A/B test what exactly?
Pulling out the NPE, give them the basics from player organizations.
There's no value in that. What they need to fix is the fundamentals of the sandbox, and they've been.
Well, no, that's the thing, though,
Pretty much
right? People
undermined
complain
it
about the.
before.
We said it earlier. People complain about the complexity. You throw them into a player organization sooner, you may just get them round it quicker by putting them with people they know, or at least can get.
I mean, we absolutely, like Dirk and I said the same thing. 2 weeks ago on the show, like make it easier for new people to join player corps.
But it's also about making it possible and viable to start out and do your own nursery thing, right? There should be more value and efficiency in trying to build your own organizations in HiSec when you start out. You shouldn't just be funneled into the big organizations initially. It should be, you should be able to spend the first 6 months to a year only having fun trying to make small groups and experiencing the value and the failure points, right?
I actually did spend
That's
for
got
6
lost.
months of my Eve career in HiSec.
Yeah,
I
because it's
did
fun.
that. I was missioning. I was wormhole diving. I was experimenting with what I wanted to end up doing before I ended up going out to nullsec to shoot people in the face.
And remember when we had the interdependency with Null, right? That HiSec kind of generated stuff that Null needed, and vice versa. You could actually do this efficiently. It made sense to start your own thing in HiSec.
Ash Tarathi's in Twitch chat with, you know what will allow new groups to grow organically? A game that is understandable and able to be learned in client. And I don't disagree. I brought up earlier in this show just today, you know, the ghost fitting was cool because it allowed people to kind of theory craft a little bit and learn how things all go together without having to leave the client. That's a really positive thing. But equally, you know, CCP in the most recent CSM minutes, in the interview that Dopamine and Goodfella did with TIS, they said they're roughly looking at 80% of their dev time being focused on new player retention and new player experiences. But I don't see anyone from CCP talking about the mission system and how fucking outdated it is, and how the moment you get out of the new player tutorial and into the career missions, you basically feel like you're hitting 2006 again.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? That everything has been left alone and not been kept up to date. So when you come in as a new player, you don't have the same incentives, you don't have the same, there's not the same valuation on the potential things that you can do in HiSec, because I really don't think that players have become that much dumber over the last 15, 16 years, right? And I disagree that with people like Ash that say we need to dumb this game down. No, we need to make it valid to start out in the nursery again. That's something that CCP has destroyed. It's not valuable.
I think there's a critical disconnect there, Caleb. He's not saying that we need to dumb it down. He's saying we need to be able to learn it in the client.
But that's
a very different thing.
That's what CCP hears, and that's what they keep doing. They keep trying to grab people's attention, make it easier, make it simpler for them to get started. And as was just mentioned, how about just removing all of that? Because make the incentive something worthwhile. Reconnect the dependencies of the game, so I can actually stay in HiSec for my entire career if I want to do that. But right now, that's not.
I mean, you basically have, Caleb.
Yeah, that's because I'm a market trader. That's completely.
You're just talking up your own play style here. What value do you have?
I want to hit something that they've said in chat, like Teak Buddha and number one. You know, that is, I think, a misnomer about large organizations, that everyone is just an F1 monkey. There is a tremendous amount of things that you can do on your own. I think the larger organizations enable much of what people complain that they can't do in smaller organizations. For instance, you know, I'll take you down in the chat to where J-Dog, right? He had a few friends start playing Eve with him in HiSec, and they just got ganked over and over and over by people, and just thought people would be dicks, right? That's the value of getting into even a moderately sized corporation. They can teach you how to avoid that, and they can make the pain of that lesser. And I think that is where CCP fails to even mention getting into corporations with friends and people in the NPE, and I think that's a major failure on their side. They don't seem to view that side of the organization or Eve. Everything that's been going on here is, if you make friends and you're in a group, you stay with Eve, and you're more likely to stay with Eve. It makes the complex things easier. It does all this stuff. And CCP seems to ignore it. It's weird.
The really funny thing about what you're saying there, Eric, is that CCP used to have a new player experience that told you, hey, here is how you access the career missions. But it actually, it seemed as if it was pushing you more towards faction warfare. And faction warfare, a lot of the time, is players shooting other players. The mechanics are fucked, and that's what the Amar Minmatar guys are kind of protesting at the moment. But it was forcing you, or not forcing, but it was pushing you, it was directing you, channeling you towards this player interaction space. And then they ripped that particular MPE out because they didn't like it, and they redeveloped a new one, and then they redeveloped a new one, and they redeveloped a new one. And, you know, where does it end at this point? You know, they had something that was really good, and they didn't understand why they weren't getting retention beyond that, and they seem to have not learned from that in the years since.
The worst part about that is that they are saying themselves that the best way to keep players in the game are player corporations. They said that themselves. And in the same breath, they say they don't want to tell new players about player corporation because
they don't want to have bias.
Yeah, like, no, not even they don't want to have bias. They just think it's an out-of-game thing, mostly.
No. They do actually not want to have bias. They're still really scared of T20 and that kind of thing happening again.
Yeah, but
that's part of what feeds into them not
telling
advertising
people,
player corporations.
No, don't necessarily advertise it. Make people aware of the mechanic and how much easier it makes the game. Okay? That doesn't point you in any direction. You could get together with 10 brand new friends playing the game, right? There used to be a commercial in the US on the 70s, and I forget which shampoo it was, but all their commercials were, and they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends, and they told 2 friends, and the screen just gets hundreds and hundreds of people in it eventually, right? What CCP has managed to do is to stop players from telling 2 friends to play EVE. Your cheapest, least expensive marketing is your player base.
But I'm going to go back to the whole value of new players, and the feeling back in the early days was that the value of a new player, an actual live player, was so high that it was pretty much like human resource sniping, and everyone was aggressively trying to get everyone recruited into their groups, right? And this disappeared with the with the introduction of the big organizations. Now it feels like big trucks full of fucking Mexicans or something, where it's just day labor. And sorry to be offensive, but that's exactly what it feels like. It feels like a new player is only valued from the lowest rung and not from the specialization that they can potentially bring into your organization. And there's just not enough aggressive recruitment anymore. People don't care about recruitment.
Talking about recruitment, just real quick, BP Gilly in Twitch chat has been talking with a couple of people, but he's just said that he got back now after a few months. His character has 23 million SP. He's still overwhelmed and he has no idea where to go because he's nowhere near ready for nullsec. I want to say to you, mate, you are absolutely ready for nullsec if you believe you're ready for nullsec. You can go to nullsec with no SP at all. You can go to nullsec with 100 million SP. You'll still be in the same boat. You're still going to have to learn from it. But these player corporations that we have, Karma Fleet, Pandemic Horde, EVE Uni, Brave Newbies, Dreadit even, a lot of these places have mechanics and mechanisms to support you and help you learn. Goonswarm has Gooniversity, and the Little Bees channel and stuff. These are places where literally no question is a stupid question. It is designed so that you can ask whatever you want, learn about whatever you want, and get answers from people who have an idea about what you're looking to do. So don't ever say you're not ready for nullsec. You can dive in whenever you want. You just have to find the right support group to help you
I see
grow.
what you're saying, Derek. I see what you're saying, but you do have a fundamental thing that you're missing that underpins exactly everything that you've actually just said.
What am I missing?
And you completely glossed over the fact that AMOC is actually recruiting as well.
I knew it was coming.
At some point, it was going to happen, wasn't it?
So I mean, and I think those are all very valid. Dirk, that was extremely valid, right? The best.
Thank
way
you for
to
validating my arguments.
No, I'm just saying the best way to learn any new game is to learn from people who have played it before, right? I mean, a lot of us, are playing that other Atlas game, and we have no idea how it all works in the mechanics, but we've got some people in our organization who have played it for several seasons, they call them, server wipes, and it's amazing how much quicker you get to the end point knowing their knowledge. and I forget who it was
You know what?
in our corporation, but
Can
somebody
I
said,
just-
"Well, let me finish this, and then I'll let you."
Yeah,
let you go. Somebody in my corporation in Eve, when they joined our corporation, they were not in nullsec, and they joined our corporation, but they had tried to play Eve 5 or 6 times and failed. But they played with us on H1Z1, and we convinced them to come back to Eve. They got access to the Goonswarm forums, and they said, "Holy crap, Eric! I can't believe it. If I had these forums the first time I started playing this game, I never would have quit." Okay? And that's the value of joining the large, or not any organization which has veterans who have played the game. And it's exactly
Yeah.
what you said.
Those things feel like conscriptions, right? Like warfare. We need you, right? That's pretty
Hold on.
much what the feeder are. Sorry, but it is, right? It's not like the targeted, very aggressive, very invested recruitment that you would do in the past when you were recruiting for your high sec or even your null sec groups, right? You were specialized. You took the time to do interviews of half an hour usually with each new fucking member that wanted to actually talk to you, because you wanted to figure out who they were, what they were interested in, where you could then put them potentially in your group, right? And whether or not you were a match. Now it's just get the recruit into the fucking grunt camp and get them to learn how to push F1. Sorry, that might be an exaggeration, but it's what it feels like right now. It feels like there is no place for a new player because they're not valued as high as they were in the past.
Yeah, and I promised to let Dirk finish, so...
I
Dirk, after you
actually...
decide. So, sorry,
you would...
somebody made fun of me.
You were talking about server wipes in Atlas, and I just wanted to point out that there are a bunch of goons playing Escape from Tarkov, and there's a new server wipe coming up, and so if you want to play with us, ping Sothrisol.
There you go. I think you both should be playing Atlas with me, because we're kicking some serious fucking ass.
If we're talking about other games, and this does actually relate back to the EVE Online helping people. So I've been playing World of Warcraft Classic,
Oh, God.
as I mentioned. But the thing is, the situation, there's been times when I've been in situations where I'm pretty sure this is a stupid question. And so I'll ask something and people are like, yeah, well, don't you know? I'm like, no, this is the first time I've ever played this game. And then the mood immediately changes to, oh wow, okay, you're like new, like you've never touched World of Warcraft before, so you don't know all these old secrets, you don't know all this old stuff. It's like I asked the other day, is Honored the highest discount I can get when I was buying some skills? And they were like looking at me going, oh, don't you know? It's like, well, no, because I've never played this game. I spent an hour trying to get to the Dwarven starting area when I should have spent 30 seconds Googling something and then 5 minutes on a train. That whole process for me was, an hour I played just going in the horrible direction, having to run back manually on foot without any speed boosts, anything like that. And then literally 30 seconds of Googling, or if somebody was there to tell me or help me through it, I would have then known to go get that train and off I went. That is what Eve needs, because people literally banging their heads against the thing saying, I don't know what to do. People need the guidance. They need showing where to go, what to do. They need people to talk to. Otherwise, they're not going to... I am in a guild. The thing is, though, I just didn't think to ask, because I didn't want to be like,
The thing is,
how do I get here? How do I do that?
It gets even, like, to hammer down on the point even more there. If we're talking classic WoW, there were a lot of things you couldn't do alone. And we are talking basic things. Like that quest you have, well, good luck. It's a 3-man quest. You're not gonna do that alone. Or it's a 5-man quest. So they were forcing you to work together with other players. You met other players just by leveling up. That's not even mentioning the end game.
There's actually the Sisters of Eve Epic arc does that towards the end. I think it's the second last mission or whatever. There's basically an end boss that you cannot solo in your Algos or whatever the fuck you're doing it in, and it pushes you to go, hey, can somebody help me out with this? it's a good mechanic. It forces you to interact, and once you interact, you're more likely to stay.
Because here's a real thing with Eve right now. I'm looking at getting myself a jump freighter. I have no idea what I'm doing with it. I've played Eve for God knows how long, but I've never touched or approached a jump freighter. My understanding is you light a beacon, you make sure you jump to the right beacon, or rip in chat for losing a jump freighter for jumping to the wrong thing.
I was literally going to say, like, I think the correct way of utilizing a jump freighter is always to jump to beacons and never to jump to
specifically the 1DQ beacon.
By the way, you jump to the beacon blind.
That's the proper way to
use a jump freighter. Blind. You just go. And by the way, you should
I believe if you jump blind, your the stuff inside of your jump freighter also doubles in price in value.
And by the way,
goes up
there
as well.
is the new mechanic that they announced for the November patch, which is jump freighter asset safety. Right? Y'all read that, right?
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, here we are. You got me. That's fair, but you know what? It says something about the state of Eve that I wasn't entirely certain that CCP wouldn't try and do something like that.
Oh my god!
And it's been that long since we've had a dev blog, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if I've missed one because I haven't been looking.
And by the way, if I preempted them on an Eve Vegas announcement, I'm really sorry, but yeah,
I mean, you know what, Bughost? I'm actually going to go and look at the last time we had an actual dev blog.
29th of the 7th is what I heard the other day.
Yeah. Look at Noisy.
It depends. It depends on whether or not we count the MERs and the security reports. But yeah.
Right. So we got MER, MSR, summit meetings, community fittings. I mean, community fittings maybe, but no.
Just to get back I just like to just argue on the whole thing with Eric, and I get offended every time I hear this when people talk about making things easier or removing the tedium. Every time we've had tedium removed, we've lost a player specialty, right? Every time you say, "Oh, I don't like that it's so complex and so tedious to do all this Tech 2 production." Well, lo and behold, most of my friends left the game because all of these things got flattened to the point where their work and their specialty became worthless, right? So one man's tedium is another man's specialty or entertainment. I would never sit on a gate for 4 hours waiting for someone. That's just tedious. So what are you going to do for me? Am I going to get that tedium removed so I can teleport all over the map and see all information on where players are in space? Well,
I mean,
it's like when CCP...
You could do that, but they broke the tournament tool that allows people to teleport around, so maybe not.
Yeah, and locator agents are a thing, so...
It looks like they may be adding some kind of gate at Jita to, jump elsewhere.
Every time you do this, right, every time you make these things easier to do alone, you are removing the need for another player. When you added scooping in space for freighters, all the fucking industrial ships that we needed in the past got unemployed. This is what we keep doing in Eve. We make it easier and easier to solo, and then we get pissed that we don't have friends around to play with. Well, they fucked off because they're not worth anything anymore.
Yeah, and when CCP just released Citadels and said you can play Citadels anywhere in high sec space. You don't need to have sec status, for days in order to actually drop them. Like literally, there was a community of people who generated money, purely on the basis of dropping POSs for people in high sec space because they had the standings and they didn't. It was.
And the other aspect
you just
to that,
wipe things out by doing nonsensical shit.
The other aspect to that is that when they introduced Citadels, they said, "Hey, you can drop these anywhere you fucking like." And so now there's no limit on the number of structures. You don't have to interact with other people to be able to drop your POS somewhere. Because, there were some systems where if you dropped a POS, it was going to die in about 4 days.
Or like,
and-
actually, a really,
And
a
so
really,
you had to
really-
interact, and now you can just drop a structure wherever the fuck you want. And
A
you
really
don't have
poignant
to.
Charters, guys.
really
There's no
poignant
fight
thing.
for real estate anymore.
a
Either.
real poignant thing about that, and I'm glad that you said that, Dirk. Actually, is, for example, if we had citadels in the Fountain War, right? Like that final fight that we had with Test would have been completely different, because one of them like overriding things that G-Sol did, right, was to basically remove any location that Test was able to actually drop somewhere where they can actually get safe, right? And because this was before Citadels, before you could just drop a Citadel anywhere, like
G-Sol made,
six VDT only has a small amount of moons, and G-Sol literally dropped posers on every moon. You can't do that in this system. So
Should we do a
have
bit of
these,
history
like,
lesson?
Yeah,
and that's
Should we do a quick
that's
history lesson on the battle?
and to hit
I mean,
Rancor
yeah, if you want.
in chat, no, you don't have to fuel them, right?
Yeah, you don't have to
Citadels
fuel
are unlimited. Citadel for you and you and you, and you get a Citadel. Everybody gets a fucking Citadel. That was like
yeah, and even better, you get a timer, even if it is unfueled as well.
And
you
that
also-
timer is a fucking pain in the ass amount of time as well. It's not as
Yeah,
if it's like 24 to 36 hours. We're talking about, hey, I've hit your structure and now I have to wait till next weekend before I can kill it.
And you
can
and
stay
you
safe
get
on that
tether.
while it's,
Yeah.
you can stay safe while it's reinforced. What do I care? I
And
can't
you-
do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, how hard
And
is
you
that
can
for
shoot from
CCP
it.
to change, right? Like they've done a bunch of other meaningless value changes so far this year that has changed absolutely nothing. How hard is it really for them to change reinforcement?
Well, that depends on whether or not they have any interest in it, I guess.
True. I mean, physically, if they came round to it, because
Do
they
you
as I
mean-
said, they've seemingly did other stuff that's had no effect.
Do you mean how they work in the first place, or just
No.
the numbers?
Just literally how long is it in reinforcement for, right? Change it from 7 days to 1 day.
Oh, that's very easily done.
I mean, I just want to point out that we've not seen any iteration on Citadels since Citadel 2.0 in February last year. That's like 18 months, more than 18 months of no iteration on Citadels beyond. I think they brought in the flex structures, so Sino-jammers. And by the way, who the fuck thought 3 Sino-jammers in a system was a good idea? But
Again,
I'll tell you who- I'll tell you who
with a
did.
value chain.
I'll tell you who did. CCP thought it was a great idea.
But this
guys,
is half
I
the issue
don't-
with CCP. I think I heard it best from somebody phrased it this way. I can't remember who, and I wish I could give them credit for this. But the thing about CCP is that they're very interested in building the skyscrapers. They want the next new thing, but there's nobody interested in actually doing the plumbing and making sure it all fucking works.
Well, just
Oh my
to
God.
roll you back a little bit, right? Because we keep talking about structures and what structures brought in, and we keep skipping over the point where CCP completely stumbled and fell on their face, right? Because we were hinting at it with the whole thing that usually in HiSec to launch a POS, you needed standing. So there was a barrier of entry, and then there was also an upkeep cost in the form of star-based charters, right? So you were dependent on someone else bringing you the fuel, or of course you would have to work hard for it yourself. So these things were balanced. There was a barrier, there was an upkeep cost, and there was a benefit to actually having these things. The whole idea of structures was to make it possible to work better and more effectively with the POS structures that made it impossible for you to rent out slots. So you had the lack of slot pretty much made it valuable to have these slots available to rent out to your corp mates or to public. That was the whole intention of moving it all onto structures, right? But they completely destroyed all these things when they removed the Starbase charters, removed the requirements of standing to actually launch these things in HiSec. They removed the value of the actual slots because there was suddenly infinite slots available everywhere, right? So basically they took an intent and an original idea that would have made the game so much better, and they completely made it worthless. And then they've added the building points, the cost to build these structures, way off of target and way off balance to anomalies, right? So they're too easy to replace. There's no fucking scale from each of the three sizes, right? And there's no real effective speciality and value to them. So all of the ideas and the potential of this amazing fucking new design has been lost, right? It's not worth what they would have been if they had designed it after the original premise.
Okay, now
Anyway.
go back to the bench. Go back to the bench, Caleb, and put the two mask on, okay?
Can we go ahead?
But he's totally fucking true though. It's
Yeah, no, I didn't say
Guys.
it was wrong. I just said, it might need some oxygen after all that.
Anyway,
I'm going with
I
softer
have
cell.
I have to go and train UFC. So bye.
All right, go yell at him.
Bye, Suffer
Beat him up.
Take
Make him
care,
hard,
Soph.
harm him the fuck up.
Catch you in a bit. There's a wonderful comment in. I think there's many wonderful comments in Twitch chat of basically the same thing, and I think this comes back to your ping to Goonswarm earlier on today, Eric, about
Is it
the
time for me to step
roadmap.
up?
You might need to convince us about why we need a roadmap.
Yeah,
Yes,
everybody
Right.
stand
convincing
up.
we need a
Put your
fucking
hands in the
roadmap.
air and go, roadmap. Roadmap.
Right, let me
Roadmap.
right. I'm going to convince you why Eve needs a roadmap, and I'm going to give you good examples why other things use a roadmap. So, a roadmap is effectively a company, CCP, telling us what they're planning, what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, roughly when. So when they introduced the structures, they gave us a roadmap. They said, we're going to introduce these things, these things, these things, and these things. So we had a rough idea what was coming and we could prepare.
And sorry, just to jump in on you, Falharan, it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate either. Like
It
some
doesn't,
people
no.
seem to
It
want
could
to believe.
literally just be paint. If I thought about this, I could literally do you a roadmap right now, 5 minutes in paint, of what we know is coming for the next year on Eve. The issue is that if that information gets out there, people then kind of understand and go, okay, because Eve's a big game, it takes a lot of investment. Unless you're a credit card warrior, you swipe your credit card, you buy as much Plex as you want. I mean, you might buy 5 trillion Plex and take over an ownership of an alliance, or you could spend your time grinding up to get into that senior leadership position of an alliance. If you don't have the credit card powers, you're going to be playing and investing your time and your energy into the game. Now, the issue is there a point of investing all this time, all this energy, all this stuff, if you don't believe that there's a future?
Yeah, I want to point out real quick that the initial structures roadmap that we saw from Seagull in 2014 now, the original, like, this is how we're going to replace POSs and this is what we're going to replace them with. It changed over time. They kept going back to, like, this was our original idea, but this is how it's evolved. And this is where we've got citadels from, engineering complexes, moon mining, and the way that's changed.
We've overrun on it as well. But it was a
We
guideline for what to
definitely
happen.
overrun. But yeah, like the point is that we understood that this was their goal, this was their vision, this was where we're trying to get to collectively. And that can change, as we come up against real obstacles, as we come up against issues, things have to change, we have to adapt. We're EVE players, we understand that we have to adapt. Just give us something to hope for and work towards with you.
Even if it's what they've publicly stated already, just in a nice, convenient outline. Like, hey, We're doing new player experience. We're doing Triglavians. We're doing shared bookmarks. We're doing whatever else. There it is. It might not be what you want, but it's something.
I've just seen Noisy in Twitch chat. It was okay when Siegel was in charge. A roadmap was useful, but now that Hilmar is in charge, why bother? Men don't read maps anyway.
Hold it. Go down. Go to Mossy Blog's comments. That last one was hilarious to me.
CCP are like 8 people arguing they are driving the car, except they aren't even in the car. That's brilliant. I love that.
We have great audience. So
and a few future pointers, even if it's a small scale. So we know, roadmap wise, we've got a year of Triglavians of content that they want to work on for a year, and ending with the Jitter 4.4 expansion.
The fact that that's going to take a year, by the way, is laughable.
It just feels weird.
Hold on, do we know that's actually the expansion is taking a year?
Yeah, they announced it in the scope video. I believe it was a year for the expansion of Jitter.
Oh,
because it's tied.
Okay, I thought it was going to happen in the year.
No. It's going to take.
This
long because it's tied to something that is going to eventually be launched. They talked about the fact that we can't expect anything to be the same in 6 months because they have some rather big things that are going to be rolled out. Some is going to come out most likely at Vegas, and then there's going to be some really call it big. Well, we don't know yet, but there's going to be something coming out with FanFest 2020. That is going to completely change our view of what is actually going on. It's going to be most likely tied to the new titles, right?
It's really going to change the view of how things are going on. Like, I mean, I just want to point out real quick, CCP keep talking about this third decade, right? Mm-hmm. They're talking about EVE in a third decade, the years 20 to 30. And we're in year... 16 coming up on 17 here?
Yeah.
And we don't even know what the plan is for the next year beyond, there's going to be a thing that's tied into the Jitter Trade Hub expansion and the Triglavians. There's going to be a thing. Yeah, we have a plan for the next year, but we can't communicate it.
Just to jump in.
They want us to be thinking about even a third decade? Come on.
Put on the positive hat for just a second, right? Consider this like a countdown. This is the equivalent to a physical representation of a countdown in space. They're counting down to something. Then we can talk about whether or not we keep getting disappointed by all the stuff and that we don't have a roadmap. But it is kind of cool to create a fucking countdown in space that you can sit there and see that it progresses over time and that you are looking forward to something. But, of course, that's really agree. Cool. It's ridiculous that we're not even getting hints, that we have no roadmap, because EVE is not like other games. EVE is where the player base is not just customers, they're also stakeholders. So stakeholders need more vision. They need more information on why they should stick around.
We need trust. But I just want to point out, you're right. It is really cool what they're doing with the Trade Hub. When I first heard about it, I was in a meeting for the written side of INN, and we ended up spending like an hour and a half, 2 hours on Singularity, the test server for EVE, looking at this new expansion, the wireframes. There were bits of wireframes for the new like fucking space elevator to the moon or whatever that they're planning, and it was cool as fuck. I loved that shit.
Do you want a bit of new information?
Talking about that. Go on, yeah. Absolutely.
We were looking at stuff earlier. You know PKN, the guys behind the renovation?
Yeah.
I accidentally stumbled across it, but they are, I don't know if it's a mistake on CCP's part, they are a member corporation of the Drifters now.
That's great. Like, see, these story elements...
Something may go wrong.
These story elements are not impactful. They don't have an impact on the big fights or whatever. But they're cool to think about and to know about and to talk about. And the
joke is if you removed the unique selling points of EVE, right? The ecosystem, the economy, the circle of life, the null block politics, the metagames, all these things. If you removed everything that makes me play EVE, I would think all of these things were great, but that's just not what I call EVE. So I don't understand that they are pretty much shooting down the actual quality of the game on the expense of the existing base. It does not make sense. It's just dumb.
By the way, a shout out to Pando out there who just rated us with 74 viewers. Thank you, Pando. Much appreciated.
Fuck
Cool,
yeah.
very
We
cool.
love Pando.
Yeah, we do. So, continue on. I want to give a nice shout out.
I've got one last aspect to bring on. So the thing about Eve is, even though it's not some people say it's not necessarily a game, it's more of a service on a thing. But again, more of the investment. One other platform that has a roadmap is the Epic Games Store. Now, they have a roadmap. Do you know why they've got a roadmap? They've got to convince you to buy applications, software, video games on their platform. And if you don't like the platform in its current situation,
You'll
go,
just go
right.
back to Steam.
Yeah, you go back to Steam. But if you get told, hey, you're going to have these amazing features getting added to you, you know it's worth your investment, because would you buy a game on Steam if you knew Steam didn't have any plans, didn't have any future developments? Would you buy a game on there knowing you're probably not going to have it in a couple of years' time? Or would you book a holiday with Thomas Cook knowing they're going into administration?
Apparently, a lot of people did.
Yeah, but you shouldn't. But the reason that I'm using the Epic Games Store is that people were saying there was the argument of we can't handle a roadmap, we can't handle the truth, we can't handle what's coming, and we said, well, these companies put out these roadmaps, this service puts out this roadmap. I was looking on Steam, there's a new World War II shooter, All Hell Break Loose, something like that. They've got a roadmap because they want to convince me to buy their early access game or download and play their game for free this weekend. They're not necessarily after my $20 to play it. They're after my weekend. They're after that time investment to get me just to download their game, give it a go, play it for a day or two. They want to get me. They want to get my attention. They want to get my limited time because time is the most valuable resource. And we're spending the next year.
But it's completely different in the.
Well, you had a roadmap. You had a roadmap. It was chaos. You didn't like.
But we keep
I think
ignoring
King
the fact
Aries
that
just hit the point though in chat, right?
Just a
Which
second, right?
point? Which
keep
point
missing
from
the-
King Aries in chat?
Keep
Like,
missing. Keep
yeah,
missing
actually,
the
that's
point.
quite
Hold on. Let Caleb go, then we'll go to the next thing. Go.
Seriously, what this feels like to me is CCP trying to take over the thing that makes EVE very, very special. The fact that it's the EVE players that create 90% of all the valuable content. That we create the stories, we create the drama, we create the meta, we create the journalism, we create all these things on top of the game that makes it interesting for more than a year. Every other game, you can go out there and you can play it for a year or a year and a half, and you're done, and it's fun. And then you need a roadmap to then keep you coming back, but you're not really going to be there. You're going to come back when that roadmap then gets executed. In EVE, it's completely different. The roadmap is to make sure that the player-created content is not disrupted or devalued over time. So when we had that, we were planning strategically over years and years. This is the whole Goon gameplay. This is the nullsec gameplay. We had to strategize. We had to figure out what to prepare and how to prepare for all these big things that were coming, right? But now, with that gone, CCP is taking over saying, you guys can't create content. We're going to do it for you. That's what it feels like to me.
Aegis, just to clarify that point a little bit when he was talking about
the fuck is Aegis? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Fozzy
Okay. On this
there we go.
Going ahead
Fozzy-Sov,
and
okay?
fun and engaging gameplay.
At least use the official name of Fozzy-Sov, for fuck's sake.
Aegis came in 2015. People knew it was coming. It was on the test servers. It was on multiple test servers. It was on Duality as well. I remember that. And basically, when it actually hit the main servers, Goonswarm did an invasion of Providence, pretty much, to learn the mechanics. Like we were aware that something was gonna be crazily different. We were aware that, you know, people like SMA were gonna have to defend their space, and that was probably gonna go badly. And then we invaded Providence to learn the mechanics. This was a part of it. This was a part of the planning.
Was it so much learning, or was it we knew it was going to be shitty and we were going to prove it?
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. But
there you go.
Anyway, Bardghost had a point about King Ares in Twitch chat, and I'm interested to see which comment of King Ares he thinks is right.
It was at that time his most recent one, right? People pumped millions into Star Citizen because it had a roadmap. I mean, yeah, people bought into Star Citizen on the promise of a roadmap when there was no solid game there. Yeah. That's what roadmaps do, because it gives people a vision of what may well happen. And if they like it, they are going to buy.
I actually liked King Ares' earlier comment of, I seriously think EVE's a placeholder now for a future EVE-based IP to be made by the parent company. As if EVE Online has never been a golden goose, a cash cow to fund other investments.
Think about if all those failed investments had been pumped back into EVE and what kind of game it would be today if it were.
Think about it this way, right? You can how many times can you pump a community for cash and then dump their their investment in that particular franchise or particular game, right? How many times can that happen over and over and over again before they basically don't actually buy into your products anymore?
What did we lose, Dirk?
We lost Craig.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll bring him back.
For the audience, Craig is the bot that records these shows. So
as to Ash's comment as well just then, yes, Dust just broke profitable. I believe the rest of their stuff did. The question is, how much more could they have made doing other things?
I mean,
I've always never perfectly agreed with that.
Here's a question about Dust. Like, how much more money could CCP have made if they just released it on PC?
That's the point, right? You can't really blame them for trying to make all these secondary brands, because every one of them, in my opinion, were brilliant. They just stumbled just before they actually reached the point where they could make money on it. And that's because of mistakes that CCP made during the process. You need to expand your product line as a business. The fact that CCP keeps failing at it is just tragic, because every single time they've tried, they made something that was potentially really good, but they just didn't manage to figure out how to make money on it.
Are we about to have a conversation about little models of spaceships that we can paint, Caleb?
Please don't.
I would prefer to be able to airbrush them.
Or, like, maybe...
Paint it however you want, Eric.
Let's talk about the weird thing where to get a product that's made in Iceland from CCP, it has to go via New York before it comes back to Europe.
Well, let's just say that personally, I think the whole virtual reality thing is just a gimmick that never seems to actually deliver. But CCP are one of the few games, few developers of games that actually made something that could have convinced me to buy one, right? Spark was a piece of genius, right? It was so awesome. This is exactly the type of simple get in there and start playing that I wanted for VR. But again, they launched it on a rig that you had to invest more money than most people had, right? They were too early, basically. And this is what they keep doing. Their timing sucks, their monetization schemes suck, but their products are brilliant every single time.
Caleb, I wouldn't even say they were too early. I'd say they made the same mistake with Spark, which, to be fair, is still running, so credit where it's due, as they made with Valkyrie. They locked it to VR instead of opening it up to other systems as well.
The most hilarious part about Spark and Valkyrie and Gunjack still running, by the way, is that CCP actually run tournaments on these platforms with these IPs. You know, tournaments with people who want to play for a competitive reason.
CCP don't run the Valkyrie ones. That's done by other people, I believe.
Oh,
And then they
CCP
come
have
up-
outsourced that now as well. Okay, that,
Yeah,
that
I
makes
thought
Then
they
they
sold
come
off
up
the
with,
entire thing.
then they pretty much come up with brilliant ideas like brand unification, which to me was mind blowing. I was really hot about that thing. That would have been amazing, especially if it had been executed right. Then lo and behold, last week, an actual new corporation was launched, a new product that's pretty much going to bring brand unification to divergent titles, right? So you have different titles, but the same single account for all of them. And I will bet you money they're going to be valued higher than CCP in a year or two. And we're just going to facepalm over the fact that CCP didn't bring this in.
Okay, Ashtarothi in Twitch chat. How about when Valk was made for non-VR? There was next to no advertisement of this. Many people still don't know it's playable on normal non-VR systems.
Yeah.
Like, somebody in Twitch chat, wait, Valkyrie was available on non-VR. Like,
Imagine if that had been brand unified, so you could take your Plex from Eve and then just Plex up on Valkyrie and then install it and start playing.
also, just gonna call this out here. CCP Signal in Twitch chat with rest in peace the Alliance tournament, and I don't know if that's actually a CCPer, but Jesus Christ, I'm right there with him.
Yeah.
Same.
I mean,
Let's
it was
just
great
be-
advertisement, even if you weren't joining in, right?
And let's just be fair. It was a niche thing, and it was very hard to actually implement and keep running, and the value on conversion was questionable. We, at least most of us, agree that it was valuable, and it created a lot of promotional thing. But maybe if CCP has stats that pretty much can argue that that's not really what happened, and the fact that they were doing it on their spare time, and they were supported by the player base, and that the group that supported it pretty much fucked off and tried to do other things, and they couldn't get access without an exclusive deal. There's just tons of things where you can just say, this should have been a thing and it should have survived, but because of the stumbling things again, this also was lost.
It all comes back to effort, really.
No, it comes
Like-
back to decisions. If CCP had said, okay, cool, plus 10 gaming, you can do other things, and then we will have you, we will outsource some of the
No.
work to you.
No,
Why-
no, because like Plus 10, Streamfleet, these are all people who have great organizations, right? Plus 10 is fantastic at what they do. So is Streamfleet. But these are guys who are basically working on a volunteer basis for CCP to make the things work that we all love. Plus 10 did basically all of the streaming for the last AT. The AT
The last
before that,
three,
they
right?
did half of the streaming. Before that, they were supporting the AT with like bits that
Commentators.
CCP weren't gonna stream and commentators. Exactly. Streamfleet have basically been the guys putting on the live streams for the entirety of the world tour this year, from Amsterdam through to Vegas and Toronto and into London. You know, anything that's been live streamed from the Invasion tour this year has been Streamfleet guys basically doing it because they love Eve and they love what they do.
This is why
CCP have
Yeah.
to.
But this is
there
why-
has to be some
as
recognition.
a business, but as a
these
business,
guys.
CCP should have used this as an opportunity, because this outsourcing pretty much happened on a voluntary basis, similar to Vegas. How Vegas was originally a goon thing, and then eventually it grew to a point where it was worth CCP's interest,
And
right?
will be a
But-
goon thing again next year, just as a point.
But that's because they are suffering, right? What I'm saying is that when you get these things developing, CCP should have actually put a stake in it and said, okay, we're going to be part of this, and we're going to help you, and it's going to be, say, a daughter company that we can then run with you, and we will then have the whole thing of we will help finance your events, so that eventually the player base would have been running the AT, the real world events outside of Iceland, right? And this would have been a business that CCP was invested in, and they would benefit from the whole cross pollination. This would have been the smartest
It would have been
thing
great.
as a business. But
Absolutely.
CCP do not really have business savvy people, at least not from where I am standing. It looks like they keep failing on very obvious business savvy deals.
Also, just real quick, Ashtarothi in Twitch chat, where did this info about the AT being dead come from? Is there new information I haven't seen? There was a comment in the most recent CSM minutes from, I want to say Dopamine and Falcon, They were asked what was going on with the AT, and they basically turned around and said, "We would love to do it. We would really love to do it, but as it turns out, it was a staff. It was a volunteer thing from a lot of staff, and they put their own time into it, and we don't know how we can support it properly." Was kind of the end result.
Well, and we just had CCP Signal, possibly X. I don't know if he left. Do the
No,
RIP
he's still
AT.
there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Still
like
there.
So the RIP AT comment is what makes
in
it.
the chat is just
No.
like the
Sorry.
final nail, basically.
Yeah, sorry. Me saying that I wasn't sure. King Aries made a comment about the artist formerly known as CCP Signal. I wasn't sure if that's true.
Okay.
I know I've seen that title on a dev's Twitter. That might be Guards though? The line I'm thinking of.
You're forgiven then, Bard. But like, that was
Yeah,
a bit radical.
the artist formerly known as is CCP Guards thing on.
Yeah. So okay,
Yeah,
Signal's still there.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
And
And apologies, King Aries.
and Signal for God's sake.
And Signal,
Hey.
yes.
I'm gonna wrap this up in about 5 minutes here. So
Yeah, I'm just.
CCP
I'm
Signal
good.
was just joining in the conversation, saying normal things that a normal player would say. He wasn't being official, as we can say
No
here, but
official statements
Not
from
an
him.
official statement.
Absolutely.
I'm just having fun, right? But yeah, and that's and by the way, that's one of the challenges that folks from CCP have when they make comments, right? It's just hard for them. So we just
we
Exactly
read in a lot.
like we've just ended up doing,
Just be
right?
cool.
Maybe
Yeah,
we've
just
read
be
into
cool.
it too far.
yeah, just
We
be cool
may
with
be
the
read
guys.
in too far, but we take stuff from Twitch chat and then we combine it with stuff that we've read elsewhere, like the CSM minutes, like I just said. This was where that initially came from, and we
Right.
come to a conclusion. And you know what would help us to direct our conclusions in a positive
roadmap?
manner? Almost if a roadmap would be useful.
I'm gonna say we'll go around one last things here in the last 4 minutes. I'm gonna start it off this time.
I'll be back in a sec.
I look at things like the AT tournament and eVegas and stuff like that, and I see those things as huge marketing events in addition to just being things that players like, right? I never was in a tournament, but I would always watch them on Twitch, and it was one of the cool things that I could tell people who potentially wanted to play EVE, hey, we've got this cool tournament. You can actually go look at how fights work and listen to people commenting on them, right? And things like that. And it's kind of like an esports thing, and that just elevates your game, in my opinion. So that's my one last thing. I think that's something that CCP should really look at funding. You look at things that advance the ball, advance your game, make it look cooler than other games in the market, and I think that's a separator. So that's my last thing, and I'm going to go around and around and around. I'm just going to go in order down the voice channel. So I'm going to go to Barkos and make your one last thing next.
I don't even know what to say. Well, thanks, McLeod, for getting me on here, but as to everything else, I just want CCP to just finally have a roadmap, have a plan, bring something great at Vegas, make us hopeful for the future.
Excellent. Actually, that's a really good one last thing. So, Caleb, you're up.
Well, I don't really know what to say that I haven't already said. I think CCP should be valued 5 times what they are now, but
Okay. Dirk.
I don't know. I've said a lot of stuff today that I've said before, and I'm sure I will end up saying again. I absolutely agree with Mist that, hey, we need a fucking roadmap. Just because it gives us something to look forward to and, like, actually get behind CCP with, instead of weird fucking mechanics that make us stay up for 20 hours at a time gunning structures. I want to actually enjoy playing this fucking game again, please. I want to log in and feel enthused about a thing rather than just going, hey, I'll play the meta and wait and see. Give us something, CCP.
Yep. Mist.
So one last thing, this semi goes back to the roadmaps, is that we've got Halloween, the Halloween challenge.
Oh, yeah,
coming
we
at
forgot
the
to even
end
talk
of-
about that.
We literally forgot to talk about one of the main talking points. So I'm going Halloween challenge. I don't know when it's coming. If it had a roadmap, I would be able to tell you. But
Do you actually know that it is coming, Miss?
yeah, there is a string that says 2019 Halloween channel.
Oh, so this is a Hobo Leaks thing.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Fun
it-
map
it-
right here.
There's
Flower?
also Halloween crates and the Halloween skins. What am I saying? What was I saying? But if CCP dropped at the start of the month, they said, right, Halloween is coming soon. Spooktober in EVE Online is coming soon. Everyone will be like, cool, there's something to look forward to at the end of the month for EVE Online.
It's called EVE Vegas at the end of
But the issue is, yeah, apart from Vegas, if this was any other month, if they've got an event planned at the end of the month, they say, right, start of the month, you got an event, because half the time you end up playing a completely different game or doing something completely different halfway through. You're at the buffet, you've absolutely been smashing out some food that you kind of don't really like, but then they bring out the really nice stuff, and you're like, well, if I knew that food was coming out, I would have waited.
Alrighty. Good analogy. And last but not least, McLeod.
Yeah, I have no comment.
He has no comment.
Not even not even free Hong Kong.
I mean, maybe, you know.
Alrighty, folks. Thank you very much in the audience for all the follows, all the subs, everything that you do, and all the comments for sure. Because this would not be a fun show for us if we didn't have the comments to react to and share in the conversation with you guys in chat. So thank you very much for being a very chatty audience. Thank you to all our co-hosts here, and appreciate you, Bargos. Thank you for coming, Dirk, everybody,
Cheers.
all the normal folks.
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, so, and that's what makes doing this fun. Talking about a game, it was, we've got 2 weeks basically till Vegas. We're going to see if we hear something interesting. Next week's going to be our Vegas pregame, and even though I'm probably the only one going to Vegas, I think, here, but, I'll be pregaming. So, and we'll see what goes down. So thank you, everybody, and I'm sure there are all kind of places we've all got to be. So out we go.